Welcome to the 5 a.m. podcast, where we bring you insightful conversations with thought leaders and influencers who are making a name in their industries. Today, we're thrilled to have a special guest who's been navigating the intersection of family life, media, and politics with compassion and authenticity. Joining us is Val Olson, better known to her followers on X as Home Media Mom. Val has carved out a unique space in the digital realm, offering her perspective on current events, family dynamics, and the ever-changing world of mindset and ideology. As a mother and content creator, she's been faithfully discussing how politics and faith shape our lives and our families' directions. In today's episode, we'll take a deep dive into Val's thoughts on recent political shifts, including the anticipation surrounding the Donald Trump presidency and its impact on Arizona. As well, we may get into the ripple effects of Justin Trudeau's kind of resignation as Canadian Prime Minister. We'll explore how these events are viewed through the lens of a politically minded mom and discuss the challenges and opportunities they present for families navigating today's complex social and political landscape. Get ready for an engaging runaway conversation that promises to be enlightening and timely. Welcome to 5 a.m. Podcast.
Thanks. I'm thrilled to be here, and it's the best way to start your morning. I love the idea of an early morning podcast with a cup of coffee on the side, and it's a great way to start your day. I think the more that we can, in the early morning hours, get up, get a fresh start to our day, that's the most important thing. As our mindset in the morning, it controls really what we accomplish during the day. So I'm thrilled to be here.
Let's talk about the social issues that may change now in America with Donald J. Trump just days away from taking his place in the White House. It appears that perhaps we're already seeing the woke mob being shown the door. What are you seeing?
Well, I think the transition started long ago. I am somebody that I do not just hang out with the choir. I think that it's important the other days of the week to, go out there and meet and greet and talk and speak and listen and see, what the real tone in the neighborhood is. And that's kind of been forgotten about. Can we work with people that we maybe necessarily don't agree with? What common ground, if any, is there? And it really comes down to the family unit, and it comes back to the home front. And this is something that I've talked a lot about, but it's now just starting to catch on, is that coming back to the dining room table and having that multi-generational get together and working and talking through problems. In other countries, arranged marriages have a better track record than, our own record here in the free world. And so when you start looking at that, you go, okay, why is that? What are they doing differently? And so this ideology that I'm saying we're coming back to the 1950 handshake kind of world where we can show respect to our elders and we can take the next generation alongside, actually has some deep, deep value, especially when you look at the reprogramming that's needed, because we have been through a lot of years of heavy programming that really swings on one side of the pendulum, swings on one side, and it's not been healthy. It's not been conducive to the nuclear family or family values in general. It's very communist in nature, and I'm just being blunt when I say that. But the communists are very clear on the direction they want to head, which is destroying the family, and it's so deep, dark, and dirty would be the best way to put it. I've been working with a lot of moms on the home front. So as you shared earlier, At Home Media Mom is how you find me on X. And we've really done a cleanup of the home unit. So I think one of the first things about being a wife or mom is you look after the cleaning. If you don't do those dishes, they're going to be there waiting for you, and you're going to have to do them at some point because they're going to be smelly and stinky. And This is exactly the same as what's going on in the political landscape, whether it's in US or Canada. It's the same kind of mess. We got a whole lot of rats in there that have taken over. And it's time now that we get rid of the rats and we assess the foundations of what we're built on. And this is where it doesn't matter where you are in the world as a Christian. If you're not looking to the United States, which is built on a foundation that I call the rock. So it's like that Sunday school song we grew up singing. The wise man builds his house upon the rock. The foolish man builds his house upon the sand.
That's true.
And I look at the rock as Christ, who is God in your life, in your world. And we have to build on that. And it's never too late to start. It's never too late to exploring or coming back to our faith and evaluating where it is and where we want it to be.
So are you saying that the Arizonians around you aren't so much looking at the physical, but their eyes have been turned towards their spiritual need?
Oh, yes. That's a great way to put it. So Arizona, we are a free state. We're an open carry state with our Bibles and with our guns. And what I mean by that is the power of prayer is at work here. So in the past, I had been part of a watchman group on the wall of early morning risers. We would get up at the crack of dawn, 5 a.m., and we would begin our day in the Word, and then we would go to the wall in prayer. So we were spiritual snipers is what they called us. And I've since had to step back from the wall at this time because of the direction God was leading me to go into more of into a peacekeeping kind of mission. So, I did do some global prayer on the wall as really a peacekeeper. And now I'm kind of moving into that ambassador role. And so the spiritual, the political, all of it comes together. There is a place where it comes together. In Arizona, I would say it's definitely one of those portal spots. They do a lot of praying for Canada in particular. They go to battle, they go to war, and they are praying so much for Canada and just the outcome of what we're now seeing actually happen, where you have a president who's stepping in and addressing what we had been crying out for in prayer for Canada. But Arizona in particular, so they have a prayer grid that I would love to share with you guys because it's so cool. These are moms from all different churches, all different walks of life, and they're coming together praying for their communities. So there's a common denominator of people that are recognizing it starts in the home and then it goes out into the schools, into the community, into our law enforcement, into our politically, who we elect, and really spending time like unpacking that. So when we seek the heart of God, revelations come, and also you're mentally equipped and you think better, smarter, clearer, and you start, paying attention to the moral character of the individuals in these seats of power and influence. And so when you kind of move into that area, this is not always talked about or spent a lot of time on pulpits in Canada of the moral character and the accountability of your elected leaders, but it is in Arizona. So we have a lot of pastors, a lot of preachers that are equipping the congregations for, what do worst case scenarios look like? How do you get behind? How can you support and pick out good leaders? And what your own personal conduct attributes to your leadership in your community. So we have both conservative or Republican and Democrat leaders in Arizona, but we have people that are fierce prayer warriors. And I do believe that makes a difference.
Right. So how long have you been in Arizona now for with your family?
5 years.
And so what would you say, where did your real grasping on that spiritual shift in your family kind of take place? Was it while you were up in Canada, or was it after you moved down to Arizona?
It was in Canada. It was in Alberta. For those of you that don't know, and maybe some of you do know or can remember, but I was one of the instigators, I guess, of the parental rights movement when it really wasn't a thing yet. Back in 2015, I had ran for provincial politics as a wild card. I went from morning show radio to running in a provincial election to really having a spiritual awakening where I was a Christian who checked into the church pew. And after when I was able to see what was going on inside of our Alberta political realm, God really worked on my heart. And I knew that he was calling me to politics, but he was showing and teaching me at that time to understand where things were going wrong. And I did that. I have done a deep dive into the system of how the system actually operates and works. And so I started to work at rallying parents, and I was very successful at that. I think we had like 3,000 parents, 30 churches rallied and ready to go toe to toe with the government, just on the grounds of we are the parents, recognize our rights, and we want to sit down and work through a situation that we were having in the local community, which was basically a gender ideology type teaching that was completely polar opposite to anything that we could have imagined, where parents were stepping in, where teachers were stepping in and playing the role of the parent and leaving the parent out. That's it in a nutshell. We took it to court and we were laughed out of court. So over 3,000 parents from all walks of life, all different sects of religious groups were coming together. You had Christians, you had Muslims, you had atheists, you had even the gay community was supporting what we were doing, which was saying, we are parents. You cannot trump a parent's right to protect their child. And so when the Alberta government did that under the crown, under the crown of a foreign British government that is still in power in Canada, that was a real wake-up call. So when we were handed basically parents, you lose, government, you win, my husband and I had to do a real, wow, what do we do here? So we pulled our kids out of school. We ventured on homeschooling, and just like old school pilgrims, we set out on our own pilgrimage. Except this time we didn't need the Mayflower. We had a Ford pickup truck, and we were like, you know what? Canada's turning communist. We got to get out of here. And people looked at us like, you know, what are you doing? You can't do that. You know, we were met with some of that. You can't do that. How are you going to do that? And we did. We found a way. We accomplished our goal, and our family moved to the United States. And it was so different. It's a night and day difference from Alberta to USA to Arizona. People are happier in your local community. A spirit of patriotism, unlike anything I could even compare in Canada, happened at the most basic of levels. And in Canada, you're just so used to having to fight for anything, and the government is the government controls you like they have their boot on your head, and you basically, you know, everything is like set up where the government controls it. And so in the United States, it's not like that. Like, we took our little grocery cart and, you know, you could buy things for pennies. Pennies are still in use here. Here in Canada, you know, a conservative leader convinced us to our pennies were worth nothing. But here in the U.S., pennies turn into dollars, and they turn into hundreds of dollars, and they have value. So we could buy, you know, corn for 9 cents. You can buy eggs on sale for 19 cents. And so I started to, when we'd go back to Canada, I would see a little package of hamburger cost $45. And most people weren't shopping at grocery stores anymore. They were shopping at dollar stores just to put food on the table.
Yeah.
And so I was seeing we have a real problem between Canada and the U.S. And Canadians don't know how much better it is. Life in the USA is just on a daily basis. And that is political. That comes down to who you have in power and what they can get away with pulling off and not pulling off.
Yeah. Now, I was going to ask you another kind of spiritually related question, but let's get into the politics. We can circle back to moms being the driving force in a lot of areas. I just wanted to ask you, with you being in Arizona for this period of time, it's seen as a key battleground state. And I'm sure that the citizens are very aware that many times the, especially presidential election, hangs in the balance over those certain key states like Arizona. So with this knowledge, how do you think that affects or drives the conversation with people in Arizona?
There's a lot of people that don't look to the news media, I guess, to tell them the state of political affairs. So in Arizona and across the United States, the election integrity is never going to be, it's a daily conversation. And so cleaning up election integrity is a big part of it. And so that's also something that I think, with Arizona being a battleground, it depends on who you talk to on, who won and did they win and was it fair? And, so we can get really caught in the weeds on that, or you can just use your common sense. And Donald Trump and a lot of these politicians, they are so approachable, right or left side. It's going on all the time. And so they tend to focus more on achieving localized goals and moving. So when I say that, it's like you will often see them working together to produce results. But overall, I mean, it's Trump country here. Yeah. Like, you can't go very far and you will see like thousands and thousands and thousands of people gathering, flying their flags, wearing their hats, bumper stickers. Like, it's so heavily visual. It doesn't matter what like the talking heads say. If you turn on the news or the TV, you're going to have to like look at it from a boots on the ground perspective. And it's just Trump country here.
Right. So thinking to the Canadians, let's say they originated in Canada. Now they're living in Arizona. What are their 2 cents worth that you hear in talking about Trump coming into power, the state of Canada's economy and politics?
Okay. So I need to set the stage because oftentimes Canadians don't realize how involved Americans are in Canadian politics. So we know who Donald Trump is. We know the American side of politics. Americans know the Canadian side of politics. So Canadians that you have living here, they know what communism is, what it looks like, what it sounds like. They know how much money they have in their bank accounts. They know what it feels like to pay for cheaper gas, way cheaper cell phones, better quality of living. That's why they're here. So they're part of, they're part of the culture of what makes America great. But Canadians here, I think it'll be a shock to the system of many politicians to know just how political the Canadians are in the U.S., but working towards the Canadian side. So I would be considered one of those people that is very involved, very engaged, and I was very effective on the Alberta side when I lived there at rallying large groups of people and lots of churches. And so I connect with a lot of those types of Canadians on this side because we want to help. We see Canada under the British monarchy as being on a plantation, and the system is completely broken. You have a foreign crown of power, which is the head of state that calls the shots. Like you often see, I'll use in Alberta, and anybody watching or listening can relate to this. When you have a problem at a local or municipal level, they will blame it to the provincial politicians, and they'll say, oh, this is a provincial jurisdiction issue. We can't do anything, so we're going to wipe our hands clean. Then you go to your provincial MLAs, and they pass the buck. We watch this in COVID times. Oh, these are federal restrictions. Oh, this is a federal issue. So then they'll push you to the feds. Then you go to your MP. and your MP doesn't really know what to do, but it turns out the real secret is out, they have to go to the Crown for result. The Crown is really the deciding factor. And I challenge any Alberta politician, even Danielle Smith, who's been given mandates by President Trump. We're seeing her say, well, I can't do something. This is a federal issue. I can't do this or I can't do that. That's out of my jurisdiction. And it's like, you know what? You're supposed to be leading your province. If you cannot lead your province, then you need to step aside.
As we consider how politics and politicians make us feel, here's a good Stoic reminder. The essence of philosophy is that man should live so that his happiness shall depend as little as possible on external things. That's from Epictetus. That's just a little reminder to us outside of the scriptures to not focus so much on what's around us as far as our emotions go. So I wanted, seeing as how you had mentioned Danielle Smith here in Alberta, what is your take on Danielle's performance 2 years in as premier?
Well, I rely a lot on the reports that are coming from her largest vote bloc. So I'm going to say I've really put her performance under the microscope, but my perspective is at the at-home level. So I have a lot of, you could call them whistleblowers, but I have a huge populace of moms that know how to reach me and let me know what's working and what's not working. So I can give you kind of an eagle-eye perspective of where their concerns are. Mm-hmm. I would be considered more of like an echo in the bucket, but I'll do my best to represent the thousands and thousands of moms across Alberta and their take on Danielle Smith's performance. One, she's not relatable, not being someone that, again, my crowd is the moms who are often the decision makers. But it's hard when she doesn't understand what it's like to not have food in your cupboards to feed your children. And in 30 seconds, I could have homes right across Alberta show empty cupboards because there is not food. It comes down to they don't have access to proper nutritious food. They cannot afford the food prices. And Danielle Smith is in charge of that in our eyes because she is the commander-in-chief. She's our head negotiator. She's the figurehead. And so that's strike one. We have bellies to feed our children, and she's failing on that front. Also, these men that are locked in jail in Medicine Hat and in Alberta, these men do not have access to their human rights in Alberta. They do not have a fair trial. And a verdict has not been handed down. They're just left there to rot in jail. So the compassion of this woman and the performance is extremely lacking. So it's, again, not relatable because that's not how you handle business or take care of business as the commander-in-chief of your province. So there's issues there on the rights and freedoms front. Of course, there were people that have died. There is an official body count under her. And, people have died. They've lost family members. They've lost loved ones. Some, as you know, were denied life-saving treatment who reached out to the United States under Danielle Smith's time as premier and were alerting to the human rights violations and atrocities that were happening. And so, again, these bodies stack up. Marriages have ended. There is no work. The home front is hugely impacted. I had actually a report come in just days ago, and I would put this homework assignment out to your listeners and audience. But there's a lot of talk about that health records are not accessible as they were in the past to Albertans. And that there's two sides to this story. If, say, vaccination records people are not up to date, able to have up to date records, or there's questions about those records. Is the government going to force people to get vaccinated for the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th time? Or if there's illness that's coming out or discovered and these health records are not up to date or up to fact, how can they properly be treated if there's not an honest account? So it's that checks and balance part that Danielle Smith owes people a lot of answers, and a lot of unhappy people saying that it's become a pay to play. I was told that there were thousands of moms that wanted to try and talk to her, and they were directed that they needed to buy tickets at $200 a plate to come to her event. And that's embarrassing. That's shameful.
Yeah.
And that's disrespectful. And it's also an out-of-touch, elitist type of premier to do something like that at a time when moms are struggling to feed their children in Alberta, to say, well, come pay $200 for a plate and I'll shake your hand and we'll take a picture and I'll post it on my social media page. Do not think that she's worth much.
Right.
She's a better broadcaster. I've heard that. And I would agree with that. She's a strong broadcaster.
You think so?
But out of touch and unrelatable. But what it comes down to is she going to be able to work with her opposer? Because we know who's opposing. Or I guess, how could we say it? So her opposition is going to be Donald Trump, because Danielle Smith has publicly said she does not, and Alberta will not become the 51st state. Canada is not going to become the 51st state. And that means Donald Trump's her opposition. So when you look at that, she's going against the opposition of Donald Trump, and he's quite a force. And what I know is when he says something, it happens.
So I wouldn't really call her, an elitist, in the sense that I don't think Danielle Smith has the capacity for that. It seems to me that she's already maybe in election mode, and it seems that she's actually pandering to the center and left as well as the unions.
Wow.
But it makes me wonder, based on what you're saying and kind of the thoughts that I have, is that who do you think's pulling her strings?
Great question. I would say if those of you at home are wondering where to start and look, as an investigative journalist, that's what I would do. Is I always look at who are pulling the puppet strings, who are the handlers, and what influence do the handlers have. So I'm sure you've heard in the news that the government of Alberta spent over $80 million on fake Tylenol that came from another country. And I really dive deep into that story. And, I would say you'd want to look at foreign. And I'll say that, CSIS has talked an awful lot at the federal level, saying that our federal MPs, that they have evidence and proof and have sworn on their lives that there's been foreign interference in politics since the days of Brian Mulroney. Now, if you start looking into Alberta and you start unpacking some of these things, or if you start to notice some of your politicians being brought out on stage, and as example, things to watch for, they start, singing Chinese nursery rhymes in Chinese. And that is what you would call, I don't know if it's the official word, but it's a pandering politician. They're being played. And so we watched China do this very effectively, where they would bring our Canadian politicians on stage. They'd make them sing Chinese nursery rhymes. And then we watched other countries. They love to bring our Canadian politicians out on stage and have them doing, cultural dances and things like this. And so if our Canadian politicians are busy dancing on stage and learning moves, if they're that clueless and don't realize that in the bigger picture, global leaders are watching their activity, knowing, okay, we know where they're sold out. We know who they're loyal to. And that's why you don't see Danielle Smith coming into the average Alberta home where moms are and dealing with the fact that we have empty cupboards. We see her very closed off in meetings, where she's meeting with the community leaders, and who many of these, if you follow even the pictures and you look at who these people are in the community and you look at the ties back and you follow it and you see just the impact of socialism and communism and who some of these leaders are and these union connections and etc. It's really starting to spill out. And I guess it's spilling out more from the US side because Donald Trump is calling this stuff out. He's saying that the tariff, as an example, he said 25% on Canada. And what I've tried to tell people is 25% is a starting point. So, in Alberta, we watched Danielle Smith say, okay, we're going to go to the border and we're going to secure our border and we're going to do all this stuff. But these meetings that Danielle Smith was called into started in 2023, where the things that she just finally rose to the occasion on, why wasn't she talking about this stuff earlier? Why does it take Donald Trump threatening a tariff to get results? So we're going to see more of the average Canadian, especially the moms, recognizing I don't need to use a sold out politician to get things done and cleaned up in my neighborhood. The United States is on. They are watching, like the Alberta crime reports and unsolved crimes. And like when the US knows there's more fentanyl coming through the Canadian border to the US, killing Americans, is coming through Canada and how they're doing it, you better believe that they're tracking more than just the fentanyl. And so I guess I have just a word of caution to the Alberta criminal has ties in the political realm. I would say you are under the watchful and very, very capable eyes of the United States of America. And I have files like this thick of crimes against humanity that are going on specifically in Alberta. And I'm a real stickler and supporter of law and order. Our law and order border agents, our military. I don't believe that every agency is corrupted. I believe there's good people in all of these agencies. And trust me, the Department of Justice, Donald Trump's office, even Elon Musk, I encourage a lot of Alberta families to start voicing and making a testimony of what they've been through. For many, this is victim impact statements that the United States of America isn't going to let fall to the ground. And also me, Val Olson, as an investigative journalist and someone who cares and loves Alberta, who has been in the trenches fighting for this very moment, I'm not going to let this fall either. So I just encourage all of you at home that are watching this podcast, you know the crimes that are happening in your neighborhood and in your community, and maybe you've been silenced. Your victim impact statement matters, and there is no expiration date on it. So I encourage you to go to God with this, pray about it, and know that the United States, if I can bring one message of hope and encouragement from the U.S. side, you are loved. You matter, and we want you home. And it's been a long time coming where Alberta and the United States is having a reuniting, but it's happening. So many Canadians and especially Albertans have American roots. And this is something that I believe since the dawn of time, God has intended, as well as our founding fathers in the United States always intended, that Canada, they made a place for us, a space for us right inside our United States Constitution. And Canada is coming home. And we're going to see Donald Trump facilitate this. And it's an exciting time in Canada, and it's an exciting time in the United States.
So what is that place that the founders of America, the United States, I should say, left for Canada?
An invitation. So how should you at home treat an invitation? You know that you are welcomed, you are special, you are recognized, and you are loved. And now you have the Commander-in-Chief of the United States talking about you. You are all that he is talking about when, just I can't even keep up. He tweets, he talks about Canada 51. And a lot of people say, how is this going to be done? How can he do this? And so I say, just sit back. You need to try being an American and what it looks like. You need to engage in American culture. You need to understand, where you're at in your own healing journey. Canadians don't realize what and how hard of a life and time they've had, how they've had taxation without representation, and the PTSD that so many have been put through, where they can't actually say what they think because they have fear of their government fighting them or taking away their livelihood. So you need to understand that on the American side, we're well aware of what communism looks like, what it sounds like, and the effects that it has on the person. And so we see you, we hear you. Take some time and breathe and start thinking like an American. Put your Americanism on, and you say what you think, and you get busy and write down all of those victim impact statements, and all of wherever the corruption is at the most local to federal levels. If you know any part of it, or maybe you've retired and it was things that took place while you were working, or maybe it's a corrupt politician right now and you know how the crimes are being committed. Don't leave any of that out. You get ready to speak your mind, tell the truth, and do your part. You've been invited. What should you do? Well, start thinking about what life is going to be like and get excited. This is an exciting time in the United States, and it's an exciting time in Canada. I did a podcast recently where I had some of the brain trust. This would be some of your, constitutional Canadian big shots who have paraded themselves around, claiming that, they know how to get things done. And if we were ever going to walk something like this out, and specifically Alberta becoming the 51st state, their assessment of the situation is you go through an Alberta politician to get it done. You get their blessing. Well, no, we actually want their boot off of our head. And we don't need another sold out, corrupt, useless politician to give us permission. Hello, we're leaving. So get out of the way.
I have a question for you. What do you think? We already talked about the British Crown. So what do you think the British Crown's response? And will they just give up their air quotes ownership of the United States, or of Canada, I should say?
Yeah, well, I'm a source-to-source level journalist, so I will say officially on record, I am actually on international radio stations, 100 different stations across the world, and I actually have been putting reaching out via channels that I have that I am trying to get with the king to sit down, because I could speculate and I could say this and say that, but at the end of the day, I'm requesting to have a meeting with King Charles officially on the record. I think I have a lot of information he'd be very interested in discussing, because there's a lot of crimes that are happening under the crown that he isn't aware of, that some of our politicians think, one, they're never going to be caught, they're never going to be held accountable, and they're doing it under the crown, making the crown take the fall. And so when I get to him and reach him, I'm going to talk to him about some of the human rights violations issues, and then get into why this is the best fit. But from a speculation standpoint, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, they're the ones, obviously, that have a much better reach and turnaround time than I do. And I think it's the same as what you see with every other politician. They work with the United States. The United States, our military is the strongest in the world. And so our military beats to the drum of our commander-in-chief, who's Donald Trump. And so I think that goes across the pond to the United Kingdom. That goes, just ask China. My advice to, constitutional Canadian lawyers who are advising citizens, don't look to yourself to help yourself. Go get the permission of an Alberta politician and their blessing. Well, you know what? I don't think so. Like, give your head a shake, man. That's kind of my 2 cents is we don't need an Alberta politician. We're going to do business with the commander in chief directly. We can do that as citizens to have our voices heard. And it all starts with um, recognizing who we are in this. And Donald Trump is coming for Canada. So if that sounds appealing to you and you're a patriot who has lived under the British monarchy and have zero to show for it and have zero allegiance to a foreign crown in a country you've never been to, if that's you and you feel you align more with America and their values and their system, you are getting ready and you are excited. Maybe you just can't say it yet because you're just working through some of the PTSD of being, kicked around, put down, and, been made to feel less than. And that's really how the British monarchy works. It's a slave system. It's an obsolete, broken system. It's like a computer that's running on Windows 87. It's an old, obsolete system, and it's time for a system upgrade, which is the United States Constitution.
Gotcha. So do you think that this plan for Canada being absorbed into the United States will have any steam behind it with Pierre Poilievre coming in as possibly Canada's next prime minister?
Well, interestingly enough, I met with someone who's a relative of Justin Trudeau, and he had conversation with Pierre Poilievre recently. And so, and I trust him. And he said that Pierre Poilievre has an opposer. And I said, an opposer? I said, in my assessment, Pierre Poilievre is, whether we vote or not, he's the next selected for us leader, meaning he's already got the crown. And he said, oh, no, he has a new opposer. That opposer is Donald Trump. And so that's something to take really seriously. And you can watch for, because Pierre Poilievre is on record as saying, no, Canada will never be the 51st state. So that's in direct opposition. That's in direct opposition of Donald Trump and what he's saying. So you're basically saying, no, you're not going to do that. I'll take you on. So it becomes Donald Trump versus Pierre Poilievre, or versus Danielle Smith in another state, because she's saying the same thing. No, it can't happen. So I just say, sit back, get your popcorn, get ready and watch. And you tell me who has more sway, more track record, more experience, and more backing than Donald Trump. And we'll see what happens.
Well, that's good. I think we could probably leave it right there. There was a lot of territory that we covered. So Val Olson, thank you for joining me on 5 a.m. podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. And to all your listeners at home, I look forward to connecting with you online. You can find my work at Home Media Mom on X. That's
great. And do you have a website that we can direct people to?
ValOlsonNews.com. But you can find my work on YouTube. And I host a show called Secrets from the Inside. And the real secret, because of censorship issues in Canada, I've had to put my work under my co-host. So look for on YouTube, Greg, Greg, Meakin, Meakin. And if you want the roadmap on Canadians going US and what it's like, what daily life in America looks like, buy the book. It's on Amazon. It looks like this. Okay. It's called Why I Came to America and What I Think Now. And this is the real, this manual will help answer your day-to-day living questions and how it's going to get done. It's a great book, great read, and you'll find it on Amazon.
Good. Well, thank you very much, Val. God bless you, and thanks for joining us.
God bless you.